Welcome to the 482nd episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Endurance athlete. Underline that. My ankle's still not cooperating. The diagnosis is still posterior tibial tendonitis. I'm going to get a CT scan tomorrow to see if it's getting better, possibly a little nerve impingement going on. So I'm trying to find best ways to do things. A little frustrated with the medical community, so to speak. Actually, the best information that I have found thus far was in a report in an article I run far by another runner who had a similar injury by running in the snow and having ankle torsion like I did running in the mud. And she described symptoms such as burning upper shin and some nerve-type discomfort on the outside, and finally got relief after a long period of time with some taping techniques and yoga. So I actually messaged her, and it's like, can you show me how you're taping your ankle? Because nobody's really given me any good advice on what I possibly can do except, just kind of let it be, see how things are. So about a week ago, I started taping my ankle with some K-tape in a kind of funny way, but it takes some of the pressure off my ankle, and it seems to be helping somewhat. It's helping to get the swelling out. And this, when I say swelling on my ankle, it's not a big balloon swelling. It's just this little swelling and stiffness in the area. But anyhow, it seems to be helping a little bit, so hopefully I get to the bottom of what nerve is entrapped, and what's unstable, and make sure there's, not any stress fractures or anything. So it's getting better slowly but surely. But I've actually, given in and backed more off of, I'm continuing just to walk. So I walk about 2.5 to 3 miles with the dogs in the morning. They need it. Activities of daily living. So unfortunately, I guess for rest, I'm still getting in the range of 12 to 15,000 steps a day, if you look at everything. But I'm not pounding with running, so that is good. And I'm wearing the K-tape 24/7 to try to keep it stable and to try to keep me from, cues not to do anything silly, so to speak. My strength coach, Nathan Meinrich, has given me a 3-day-a-week intensive strength training program to kind of help balance out any niggles that I might have that's contributing to that. And at least when I come back, I'll come back stronger. So I have a combination of 3 days. 1 day is focused on lunges and various movements in upper body. 1 day is focused on a hex bar, which is a bar you kind of stand in the middle and pick up, and various activities. And the other day is squats. And the other activities are some mobility things and, of course, upper body exercises and such. So hopefully I'll come back stronger from all that. It was certainly nice to finally hear somebody else with a similar injury that actually came back to successful ultra running. So that made me feel better. Made me be a little bit more patient with this thing, but nevertheless a bit frustrating. Over the past several months, I've tried a variety of different things, from let's just run it loose, because I kind of thought I was just stiff after having some swelling after the ultra marathon. That didn't really prove to be successful. There was the bounce house improvement, and I really think the reason why that was an improvement and temporary is that things are just not quite in place, and taking me the bounce house might have resulted in a little shift off the nerve and gave me some relief for a little bit. So it was temporary relief, but certainly not the miracle cure that I was looking for. I've tried arch supports that resulted in supporting this posterior tibial tendon because it kind of goes underneath your arch. That shifted my weight onto the outside of my foot where that nerve is getting compressed, so it seemed to make that a little bit worse. And it also pushed my first metatarsal up in the air, so my bunion was poking into the top of my shoe, even despite wearing a big toe box shoe, so that made that worse. So that wasn't my miracle cure. I've tried cryotherapy to the area, thinking that freezing it might work. I've resorted to sticking my foot in a bucket of ice water a couple times to see if that was my miracle cure. I've stuck it in my near-red sauna up in the air to think if I heated it up, maybe that would be my miracle cure. Stimulation with a TENS unit to see if that could be my miracle cure. And, of course, stretching and pulling and twisting to see if that might be my miracle cure. I had laser therapy done to it to see if that could be my miracle cure. And surprisingly, nothing's really fixed it much. There's been a slight improvement, I guess probably, some improvement, but it's not running worthy improvement. In my disgusted state, I talk about, well, it's okay to sit in a chair. It's okay to, I can get through 13 miles. I did it in Colorado, but I can get through 3 miles easy and daily chores of daily living. It's just aggravating. Which brings me to miracle cures. I don't expect miracle cures for people, yet it's so tempting to try anything, to get relief from an injury or pain. I think it's pretty universal, and it's kind of funny when you look back on it, because you think that, and there's so much hope that if you do this one thing that you'll just stand up and walk, and it'll be a miracle cure from whatever it is that's ailing you. And most of the time, we don't have immediate relief from anything. It's a process that takes some variation of time. But it doesn't ever stop us from trying those miracle cures or gimmicks that you see on the internet, or, looking at a long list of a long diatribe by a physician only to get down to the bottom to buy supplements or a device. Oh, don't forget my device, my cork half foam, it's a half roller, so to speak, to walk on. I actually do like that. It's helping my bottom of my feet. It's good for balance, but it certainly didn't cure my posterior tibial tendonitis. And my sand dune stepper, which I think is also a good device, but it wasn't a miracle cure for jumping on that. So I, too, have participated in anything I could possibly do to make this go away quickly, to get me back running like I did, and stronger, vowing to repay the gods of miracle cure that I will never do anything stupid like this again, or I promise to do my strength training. But here we are. And I think, it is funny. Like I said, we all try for miracle cures. I think it's because we have hope as humans that we're going to get better, and as long as we have a plan and keep moving forward, it's worthwhile. But it all comes back that nothing ever is quick when it comes to fixing anything for the most part. And it's probably a lesson that I'm in the process of learning or rebelling against, but nevertheless, maybe do as I don't do, or do as I say, but not as I do. Watch out for the miracle cures that are said to be able to heal us or prevent disease or turn back the clock immediately, when, it's probably not a whole lot of merit to it. And time, as we've heard before, seems to cure most wounds. In the medical community, we also are often surprised when miracle things don't happen. People still have heart attacks on the miracle cholesterol drugs. The newest miracle drug for weight loss will only result in weight loss if people are compliant with dietary restrictions. You cannot eat 8,000 calories a day and lose weight on these medications. So there is an effort that's involved. No one ever shows up for a marathon without training. Effort is involved. There are no miracle plans where you can, walk 3 days a week for 5 minutes, or the Bowflex claims where you can 5 minutes 3 times a week and you can have a ripped body. The bottom line comes back to we all have to put in the work. And I think that swings back around with, again, mobility and fitness training as well as nutrition. weight loss and improving our health, we have to actually put in the work. There's no miracle berry that's going to turn back the clock in the presence of a ribeye steak or other dietary indiscretions. So when people say I eat a lot of fruit, but they also eat a lot of other things, and then blame the fruit that wasn't the miracle cure, similar things. It's just not quite that easy. However, there was a study that looked at first-time runners training for a marathon aged from 21 to 69, looking at the stiffness of their aorta, so mainly in the thoracic area, but also descending, before they started marathon training and after, and they used an MRI technique to look at aortic stiffness. So when your heart beats, the blood goes out into your aorta, which is the main blood vessels that supplies and branches to form all the other blood vessels in your body. And so if that becomes stiff, then it can lead to decrease in coronary artery perfusion, but perfusion to other arteries and further damaging and hardening of the arteries and higher blood pressure and so forth. So these people went on there were 138, and they put them on a 17-week, it was a six-month training program, and they ran only 6 to 13 miles a week. So it was actually very low volume when it comes to running a marathon. They ran the London Marathon, and then they measured their aortic stiffness before and then after, and they looked at their aortic age by a calculation, and what they found was that their blood pressure decreased by 4 millimeters of mercury on average, and that is equivalent to a blood pressure medication. The aortic distensibility also increased, both in the ascending aorta and descending aorta, and their aortic age decreased 3.9, almost 4 years. If you were an older man that was a slower runner, you had the best results. So taking up marathon running at any age can improve your aortic age and overall risk for cardiovascular disease and blood pressure. So again, running, brisk walking for, again, prolonged times. If you're running 6 to 13 miles a week, you're putting some extended efforts in. It's, again, long-term better than a blood pressure medication as far as no side effects. You can keep doing it and your blood pressure will stay down and improve the overall function of your aorta. There's no medication that'll do this. There's no medication out there that will change the anatomy of your aorta or the distensibility. So good news and another reason to run. It's also a good week to be a vegan when it comes to soy food. So soy foods, tofu, tempeh, you can put miso, edamame, roasted soybeans contain isoflavones, which they're estrogen receptor blockers, but they've also been shown to decrease cholesterol and provide a variety of protection and perhaps even increase memory in older people. But this was a study actually looking at children and the mental benefits of school-age kids. And they looked at the consumption of tofu, tempeh, roasted edamame, and how it associated with their attention focus and processing of information. And it was very interesting because they used the dietary history for 7 days. They looked at 128 kids from age 7 to 13, and they tested them with paper and pencil tests. If you're a teacher of sorts, they used a computerized flanker task test, which basically tried to distract, put two things together. One would be distract you and see how well that they could perform. To look at their information processing, and again, the speed of the processing and their attention. Then they also did EEGs to correlate that speed. So it was quite a robust test. The interesting thing was that the soy intake was not nearly as high in these children as, say, Asian kids. They only took in 1.3 milligrams of isoflavonoids a day, The range was 0 to 35. But 8 ounces of soy, for instance, contains 28 milligrams of isoflavones. Tofu, 38. Half a cup of steamed edamame, 18. And so the kids that took in the most had the best mental processing and speed. So pretty cool thing for school-age kids. Another reason to introduce soy foods to kids, as well as the potential breast cancer and future prostate cancer prevention that you do when you introduce these foods in young children. It is a great food for kids. It's soft. It can be made to taste like just about anything. You can make it into a pretend chicken nugget. You can make it into a scrambled egg type consistency. They can pick it up. So you can send it to school. Of course, edamame you can shell, or you can have it into soups. So it's actually a very easy thing to incorporate in a child's diet and improve their attention span and focus and processing ability. The other good thing about being a plant-based person this week was not eating a high-fat diet, because they looked at how a high-fat diet fuels the oncogenes, or genes that turn on cancer in prostate cancer. And they looked at how the high-fat diet interact with overall metabolism and lactate production, and again, turning on genes that not only made the tumors grow, made the blood vessels to tumors grow, but also stimulated the tumor cells to migrate or metastasis. And they looked at it in two different models. They looked at it in a mice model that had a genetic characteristics to gain weight, and they saw this high-fat diet, especially in saturated fat. The mice developed typical metabolic problems with increased glucose, increased inflammation, and increased modulators of the tumor microenvironment, and they also increase and change in hunger sensation. But then they looked at the genes and saw that these were also accentuated, and they thought that the process the high-fat diet changed the metabolic pathways of the cancer cells into more production of lactate, and so they had abnormal cell metabolism, and again, things got worse. Then they looked at men with prostate cancer in a similar type fashion and saw that a high-fat diet was associated with increased metastasis, increased tumor cell growth. Previous studies have also shown that obese men fare much worse with prostate cancer than normal body weight. So another reason to normalize body mass index, watch what you eat as far as fat intake in the presence of cancer. Sugar is always the one that's thrown under the bus with tumors, but again, tumor cells being what they were, they're going to use any nutrition that they can get a hold of to alter their metabolism. So a high-fat diet is certainly not protective. You have no, other associated phytonutrients or anti-inflammatory compounds either. So stay away from the fat, especially saturated fat, if you want to prevent or decrease the spread of prostate cancer. Another plug for soy. It's also been associated to decrease prostate cancer progression and turn back and decrease the growth of prostate cancer cells as well. Bottom line is that diet matters, and a diet that is heavy in plant-based foods, antioxidants, phytonutrients is going to be your best bet for health and mentation. Plant-based eaters are often thrown under the bus because the fear of being iron deficient. But there was also another study that looked at iron levels, and the higher the iron levels, the worse the prognosis as far as dementia and inflammation and worsening of cardiovascular disease. Iron's a heavy metal. It gets deposited in the heart, the brain, the liver. People that eat a carnivore diet or high red meat diet intake more iron. Iron in the form of heme is readily absorbed. There's no regulated plant-based iron found in spinach and other foods, oats, molasses, and so forth. We get plenty of sources of iron in our diet, but it has to be bound. And so we just don't take up all forms of iron. So we have to, we actually take iron up as we need it, and not all of it. So it's even more protective. You want a normal iron level, so your nutrition should be at such. But I have really never seen a plant-based person iron deficient that didn't have another underlying cause. Whether it be some sort of bleeding or other metabolic abnormality. But a plant-based diet can certainly sustain adequate iron levels, but you don't have to worry about having high iron levels, which again is associated with the toxicity. Think about iron and think about rust. So yet another good reason to be plant-based. I often wonder why the plant-based movement hasn't taken off quicker than it is. I mean, certainly over the last 5 or 10 years, you see an abundance of plant-based things in grocery stores, plant-based milks, plant-based cheeses, meat alternatives, restaurants offering plant-based meals. But it's still not the cool thing to do in most areas. So we're not the cool kids on the block by any stretch of the imagination. You tend to see paleo people that are CrossFit, big and muscular, carnivore people lifting weights, quick fixes with weight loss, eating a high-fat diet for a period of time. It's never sustainable, but it's for a period of time in a younger population. And plant-based nutrition is associated with animal activism, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it tends to be people that are maybe difficult to get along with. At times, it's associated with being a little bit harder to find, so you have to cook for yourself. You have to know how to cook. People are worried about deficiencies. The plant-based, again, the plant-based athletes are not readily showcased because, let's face it, most of the sponsors are for processed foods, fast foods, which are animal-based foods. So there's not a lot of money in people eating plant-based, certainly not a lot of money in vegetables. So the culture of being plant-based has certainly remained somewhat fringe. There are some very good bodybuilders, Olympic weightlifters, swimmers, runners. There's athletes in every sport that are plant-based that do quite well and tend to have extended careers. But quite frankly, I think that they get tired of being asked about their nutrition. There's certainly a lot of ultra runners that are plant-based. There seems to be a fad one way or the other that people either plant-based or all the way kind of a high-fat type intake. But when it comes down to it, carbohydrates are king when it comes to endurance sports because you need the carbohydrates to fuel the readily accessible and easy forms of energy. Somehow bacon tends to remain king, even though it is a very fatty, processed type meat associated with increased risk of cancer and the like. To add insult to injury, however, and again, people tend to ignore it, is that the first mRNA vaccines have been given to the hog industry. And they've been found to actually make them quite sick, and some of the mRNA genetics, gene materials have actually been found in the meat of the animals. So when you look at the animal sources of meat, of no other reason, the contamination both with vaccines, antibiotics, bad quality food, genetically modified food, glyphosate. So the animals that most people are eating are, again, unhealthy and heavily contaminated. The only reason that they make it to market is because they slaughter them at such a young age. Their conditions are terrible. So, they wouldn't have survived to the age that, those either cows, pigs, or chickens should live to, because their diet is so bad. So, I guess better for them that they're put out of their misery, perhaps. I don't know. Probably not. It'd be nice if they were just treated humanely and given good food. But again, because of production and overcrowding, they're giving all these vaccines. And so people don't talk about the contamination of that food. And when you eat something that's been contaminated for a year, it's a lot worse than if you eat something that might have been contaminated if it's not organic vegetable for a few months. I like to eat organic most of the time. Probably occasionally something will slip in, but for the most part, I believe in supporting the farmers to work with less chemicals and have less exposure and let them be healthier. So I don't mind paying more for organic fruits and vegetables, like I said, as much as I possibly can. But even if there is some cross-contamination, it's certainly much less than a factory-farmed animal that has a miserable life full of chemicals, antibiotics, and vaccines, and basic experimentation. So I don't think we're going to be any healthier as a society when we're relying on that as a food source. The question is, how do we make it cool to be plant-based? And I think only people in this movement can be beacons to demonstrate that you are healthy and you're living well, living without medications, choosing nutrition over medications and procedures, and that is actually what will grow this over time. I think, people want to know when somebody looks good, as opposed to somebody that's sick. What are you doing? So you're never going to ask an obese person with diabetes, what are you doing to get that way? It is be more likely to find out what how somebody that's fit and doing well and doing what they like to do well into their late age is, that's what people will ultimately want to emulate. But we've got to grow the masses and be beacons among ourselves for healthy lifestyles. That is why, I think it's really important to advocate for both plant-based nutrition and movement to maintain a healthy body. No matter what you do, if you don't have muscles and mobility, you're at risk for injury. So our practice is all about getting people up and moving with walking, running, whatever sport that they like, wellness challenges, but strength training and mobility training as well. I think it's extremely important. You just kind of, you can't go through the motions. You actually have to work at it. I had a talk with somebody today, and unfortunately, we have time to do things that we really want to do or make things that we really want to make. But when we don't want, when it's not as exciting, we tend to push it off, and then it becomes an issue. So mobility and movement is everything. I can't help but think that someone might ask, well, if you are so healthy, then why do you have this tendon or this ankle injury that's not healing? Why aren't you back running? And why did it happen in the beginning? And hindsight is 20/20, and the reason for it is that I have been a road runner, a triathlete for most of my endurance career, to the point where I'm sure I've said it on the podcast, if I'm running on the road, I go around a pothole. If I'm running on the road, I don't run into the grass. If I'm biking, I'm clipped in pedals where my feet don't move at all. So my big muscles are very well trained over the years, the last 20-some years of running marathons. But the little stabilizer muscles have all of a sudden got this tremendous workout from not only going to off-road into trails, but when we went off-road into trails, we went into distance. So all of a sudden, we went from the marathon to the 50K, 50-mile on uneven, rocky terrain up and down and side foot, and my little stabilizer muscles had somewhat of a shock to their system, so to speak. In retrospect, I'm probably lucky that this is the only thing that I've had happen. But I'm also lucky that the rest of me is also getting used to the different terrains, and I think I'll come around. I don't think my nutrition has anything to do with it, as opposed to the volume that I increase so quickly, as well as the terrain. The other thing that goes along with, running in the trails and getting outside and even walking in your parks, walking outside, there have been shown a lot of changes in your microbiome just by being out in the woods and walking. And there's been some Japanese studies that have shown that people have a much healthier microbiome, blood pressure goes down. All the benefits of exercise goes down much more if it's done in an outdoor environment, especially in a park or a forest or wooded environment. So go ahead, try it too. Go out and try some trail walking, hiking, or even just getting out in the park or even outside. It's so much more benefit than being inside. Some of these transitions are hard, especially for young families, and introducing soy foods, introducing food, dinner time with toddlers, dinner time with young families, getting things on the table, as well as going to soccer practice and baseball practice and dancing, can be very difficult. And families often do the grab and go or take out at fast food restaurants. I saw a post where children were given Cheez-Its and Lunchables, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter what they have as far as formula or breast milk because they're going to transition to these poor foods really quickly, so it doesn't really matter. But we know that kids that eat better do better, both from an immune system and a mentation system. I'm going to have Addie on the podcast in the next couple of weeks after she kind of gets back from the hurricane. They were a direct hit there in Houston. So once things get back in order, I'm going to have her on, and we can talk about her interest in doing consultations for young families that want to eat better. How do you get things on the table? So she went through 5 days of no electricity in Houston with a toddler and an infant, and they have remained plant-based. And actually, it's great to go through a hurricane, if you have to go through a hurricane plant-based, because you don't have to worry about meat contamination and milk contamination and spoilage and things. So it's much easier to eat plant-based through these things. And if you know how, it's even easier. Sending kids to school, plant-based. So we're going to have her on and, again, talk about some of the things that she would like to do. And, if you have interest in our practice as an older person or an adult, and you're just not sure which way to go, you've been told that you need blood pressure medicines or cholesterol medicines, or you know somebody that does, you need further testing, and you're not sure why you should have further testing, or should you have testing every year, I would be more than happy to consult with you to help you go over tests that you've had, understand maybe a plan to get off medications or to improve your health or your nutrition where it is. So go on over to our website and check things out, or give us a call at the office, or you can email me at jami@drdulaney.com. It's JAMI@drdulaney.com. Our website is drdulaney.com. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my stories, listen to some of the data that I present. If you like this podcast, be sure and share it with a friend or give us a rating on iTunes. I appreciate all those people that listen. It's always fun to hear or run into somebody that listens to the podcast. So thanks always. I appreciate you listening. To your health, get out and move. Get some tofu into your diet. Get out and get some sunshine and walk in the trees. Things will be okay. Thanks for listening.